All right, let's get right into it. The story in the Bible has already had some pretty serious trouble, right? But Genesis chapter 6, this is where things take a really dark turn. I mean, if you had any hope left after chapter 5, this part of the story feels like it's there to just stamp it out. It's a picture of a world just completely spiraling out of control. And it all kicks off with this verse, which is, well, it's deeply disturbing. The language here is so specific, so chilling. Just look at the three key actions. The sons of God saw the women, they decided they were good, and so they took them. This is not a love story. This is about predatory desire and power with absolutely no limits. Now, that little sequence of words, saw, good, took, it should ring a bell, right? It's meant to sound familiar, because as you can see here, it's the exact same pattern from the Garden of Eden, when Eve saw the fruit, thought it looks good, and she took it. And here's the thing, the problem wasn't that the women or the fruit were bad, creation itself was called good. The problem, the sin, was in the taking. It was about crossing a boundary that was never ever meant to be crossed. It's a theme of catastrophic failure. So, that leads us to the million-dollar question, the big mystery of this whole chapter. Who exactly are these sons of God? The text is super cryptic, and honestly, people have been debating this for thousands of years. So you know what? Let's do a little investigating into the main theories. Okay, so historically, we've basically got three main suspects in our lineup. First up, we have the supernatural theory. We're talking about fallen angels. The second theory says, no, these were all too human. They were powerful, abusive kings. And the third theory says it's not about angels or kings, it's about a conflict within humanity itself, the family line of Seth. Let's dig into each of these. The fallen angels theory is definitely the most dramatic one. It mainly comes from this ancient Jewish text called 1 Enoch, and it tells this wild story of 200 angels who came down to earth, took human wives, and had children who were these violent giants called the Nephilim. According to this story, these giants just wrecked the planet, devoured people, and threw the whole world into chaos. It was a huge idea at the time, and it even influenced New Testament writers like Peter and Jude. Okay, theory number 2 brings this whole thing down to earth, into human history. In this view, Sons of God was a title for powerful kings and rulers. And their sin was this brutal abuse of power called droit du seigneur, or the right of the first night. Basically, a king or a lord could demand to sleep with any new bride in his territory. And this wasn't just some myth, it was a real and truly awful practice in the ancient world. And the third theory, it keeps the whole problem inside the human family. The idea here is that the sons of God were the descendants of Adam's good son, Seth, and the daughters of humans were from the line of Cain, the murderer. So the great sin wasn't about angels or kings, but about the godly line mixing with the ungodly line, until the corruption just became universal. And you can see the appeal of this view, right? It keeps the focus squarely on human choices. So you've got these three very different ideas: fallen angels, abusive kings, or this clash between the lines of Seth and Cain. But what if there's a clue from another famous story, from the same time and place, that could actually help tie all of this together? And for that, we turn to the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is a huge, foundational myth from ancient Sumeria, and it has some really startling parallels to Genesis. Its hero, Gilgamesh, was this powerful king who is described as 2/3 God and 1/3 man. And how did he use his power? Well, he oppressed his people, specifically by taking newly married brides for himself. Starting to sound a little familiar? And this opens up a really fascinating hybrid view. What if the sons of God weren't just fallen angels or just human kings, but a bit of both? What if they were these semi-divine rulers, these hero kings like Gilgamesh, who were celebrated in all the cultures surrounding ancient Israel? See, the author of Genesis might not be celebrating them. This whole story could actually be a powerful critique, a condemnation of those hero king cultures and all the violence they represented. But here's where we need to make a really important shift. Because as interesting as it is to debate who these guys were, focusing too much on that can make us miss the whole point of the story. The real mystery isn't who they were, it's about what they did and the destructive idea they let loose in the world. So this is the heart of it. The text is defining a core act of sin. Taking whatever you see, whatever seems good to you, with zero regard for boundaries or for other people or for God, that right there is the definition of wickedness. It's the engine that drives corruption. And the results were, well, they were devastating. This principle of saw, good, took, once it was unleashed, it spread like a plague. The text says the human heart became just consumed by wickedness, the earth itself became corrupt, and the whole world was filled to the absolute brim with violence. So, how does God respond to his creation just collapsing into chaos and violence like this? Well, this question brings us to one of the most difficult and, frankly, one of the most misunderstood parts of the entire Bible. The text says twice that God regretted making humanity. Now, does that mean God messed up? Made a mistake? Not really. The Hebrew word here is probably better understood in terms of accounting. Imagine a financial ledger that is totally out of whack. To regret or relent is the act of making a major course correction to bring the books back into balance. It's not God saying, oops, it's a decisive move to counteract the evil and restore some kind of justice. And this is where that comparison to Gilgamesh becomes so important. In the Sumerian flood story, why do the gods send a flood? Because humans are being too loud and they're interrupting the gods' naps. Seriously. The gods are acting on a whim, they're self-interested, they're even fighting with each other. But in Genesis, God's action has a clear moral reason to deal with the corruption and violence that has literally consumed the world. It's purposeful. It's about justice. So God does this moral audit of creation. And let's just say the books are a total mess. But in the middle of all that red ink, the audit finds one balancing item, one single exception to the rule of corruption, a man named Noah. So what was it about Noah? What made him so different? The text tells us exactly. While the rest of the world was defined by taking whatever it wanted, Noah was defined by the complete opposite principle, obedience. He did what God commanded. He didn't just follow his own gut, his own desires. He listened. And that is the whole point. Now, it would be so easy to write this whole chapter off as just some brutal ancient story about giants and a flood that has nothing to do with us. But that core principle, that sin of saw, good, took, trust me, it is as modern a problem as they come. It never went away. I mean, just think about it. This is the same principle that drives nasty corporate fights over who gets to take credit for an idea. It's the logic behind illegally downloading a movie. I see it, it looks good, I'm just going to take it. It's the engine of adultery that shatters families and the financial fraud that can bring whole economies to their knees. It is simply the destructive act of crossing boundaries because we want something. So, what is the message for us then? What are we supposed to take away from this dark story? It's really about learning to develop a kind of double vision. It's about learning to not just see what's good and desirable to us, but to also see God, to see a higher moral reality at the same time. Look, seeing good is the easy part. That's our default setting, right? We're all wired to want what looks appealing. But seeing God, that takes work. That's the second, harder step. It means stopping and asking, okay, I want this, but does this desire line up with wisdom? Does it respect the boundaries that actually lead to peace and justice? It's all about self-control. And that really leaves us with a final, massive question for our own lives. We live in a world that bombards us with messages to follow our heart, take what we want, you do you. So in this world of just endless desires and temptations, how do we train ourselves to see that second perspective? How do we know when seeing what looks good is about to cross the line into something really, really destructive?